We often think about American military power as something that really came into its own in the 20th century, don't we?
Definitely. World Wars, Cold War.
Mm.
That's the usual focus.
But what if I told you a conflict much earlier, a sort of forgotten war against state-backed pirates, actually forged America's early foreign policy and maybe even laid the groundwork for its military?
Ah, you're hinting at something specific.
Exactly. There are some really surprising things in this history that you probably haven't heard much about. Today, we're doing a deep dive into the Barbary Wars. It's a fascinating and, frankly, pretty brutal story about the Barbary pirates.
Right. And our mission here, using the historical sources we've got, is to really pull out the key insights for you. We want to give you a solid understanding of this conflict, why it was fought, and importantly, why it mattered so much for the young United States.
Yeah, it's often overlooked, isn't it?
Completely. But the accounts, they really show not just what unfolded, but the deeper reasons why it ended up reshaping American power on the world stage.
That's what I find so compelling, too. It's such a vivid picture. This young nation facing a really serious threat. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
So, to really get it, we need to set the scene. We're talking about a long period here. For something like 10 centuries.
An incredible length of time, yeah.
These pirates, the corsairs, operating from the Barbary states in North Africa, were basically terrorizing the Mediterranean and even parts of the Atlantic coastline.
Their main business was raiding coastal villages and seizing ships.
And specifically capturing people for slavery.
Exactly. And the way they did it, according to the sources, was just horrific. They often attacked before dawn, total surprise.
Yeah.
They'd kill non-Muslim older men, older women,
Yeah.
people who wouldn't fetch a high price or were maybe seen as difficult.
And focused on
Young women and children. Those were the targets. They were taken to be sold in Middle Eastern slave markets, often ending up as concubines or, for the boys, sometimes eunuchs.
It's awful.
And the sources are clear. Many, many did not survive the capture, the journey, the whole ordeal.
The historical texts often call them terrorizing Muslim pirates, and it seems they were sometimes directly commissioned, basically sent out, by the rulers of those Mediterranean states.
Right. It wasn't just rogue operators in many cases. It was semi-official policy for some states.
And they weren't just hitting villages, they were boarding ships, taking passengers, women, children, straight into slavery. And the really tragic part, for so many families back home, their loved ones just vanished, never heard from again.
The human cost was just staggering. You know, one detail that really brings it home is that the names of people captured by these pirates were actually read aloud in their home churches every Sunday.
Wow. Like
that.
like the names of sailors lost at sea.
Exactly like that. It shows how constant and real this threat felt. And while some were held for ransom, getting the money was incredibly hard.
Yeah. Who paid?
Mostly, it had to be raised privately. Families, friends, local communities pooling resources.
Yeah.
Because the early U.S. Congress, well, it just didn't have the funds or perhaps the structure yet to pay the huge amounts demanded.
You can just imagine the desperation. And this threat, it wasn't distant for the new United States, was it? It hit home pretty quickly.
Oh, absolutely. Attacks on American merchant ships started right after the Revolution, around 1784.
And these ships were vital, weren't they?
They were the absolute lifeline for the new country. Imports, exports. That's how America engaged with the world economy.
And the scale of this piracy over the years, it's kind of mind-boggling.
It really is. By the time the main conflict wound down, maybe 30 years or so after those first attacks, estimates suggest the Barbary pirates had kidnapped and enslaved somewhere around 1.25 million people total over the centuries. Not just Americans, of course, but Europeans too.
1.25 million.
An enormous number. And yes, sometimes they tried ransoming them back, but slavery was the main industry.
And America in 1784, well, it was uniquely vulnerable.
Extremely. Because think about it, during the colonial era, who protected American shipping?
The British Navy, the Royal Navy.
Exactly. Independence meant that protection vanished. The U.S. had disbanded its own continental navy after the Revolution. So American merchant ships were out there basically alone.
Defenseless. I read they might have had small cannons, but only for signaling in fog.
Pretty much. Not for fighting off determined, well-armed pirates. They were easy targets.
And this was happening in violation of what people considered normal maritime law back then?
Absolutely. There were established ideas about international waters, about safe passage near coastlines. These groups, the sources call them corsairs, sometimes using harsher terms of the era like Muslim terrorists or extremists. They just ignored all that. They started attacking American ships in force even before the Treaty of Paris had officially ended the Revolutionary War. It was a direct challenge to the norms, and America had to figure out how to respond.
What's surprising, too, is that even before Washington became president under the Constitution, some big names were already dealing with this.
Right. The problem predates the Constitution itself.
People like Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, they were sent as ambassadors, weren't they, to try and talk to these North African states.
That's right. They were tasked with diplomacy first. Go over, negotiate treaties, figure out a peaceful solution.
And how did that go?
Not well. Their reports back were pretty blunt. They discovered these Barbary rulers, well, they did not want to be reasoned with. That's the phrase that comes up.
They only understood force.
That was the conclusion Jefferson, Adams, and Franklin essentially reached. Force. They found no real interest in diplomatic solutions that involved giving up the lucrative piracy and slavery business. Releasing captured people wasn't really on the table without massive payments.
So diplomacy hits a wall, then Washington becomes president, the new government is formed, and the source says the war began in earnest. But the real shift came later.
Yeah, the conflict simmered, payments were made, ships were still captured. It wasn't really decisive. The big change in strategy happens when Thomas Jefferson becomes the third president.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, right?
This is pivotal. Jefferson had been dealing with this issue for years. First as ambassador, then Secretary of State. He saw firsthand how much money the U.S. was spending.
How much are we talking?
Get this. By the time Jefferson took office, the U.S. was paying over 20%, one-fifth of its entire federal budget, as tribute or ransom money to the Barbary states.
20%? Just extortion money.
Basically, yes.
Yeah.
Just to keep them from attacking American ships. Think about that today. Imagine paying 20% of the entire U.S. budget to, well, to anyone for protection. It was completely unsustainable.
No wonder Jefferson drew a line.
Exactly. He'd seen enough, and that led to his famous stance.
Not one more penny for tribute, but millions for defense. Is that the quote?
That's the essence of it.
What?
He decided that appeasement wasn't working and was far too costly. So he took that same money, that 20% or so that was going to tribute, and he invested it. He channeled it into rebuilding and strengthening the U.S. Navy and also funded the U.S. Marine Corps.
And then sent them over.
And then sent them over to the Mediterranean to, as you put it earlier, sort of start taking care of business, to confront the pirates directly.
It's really incredible, though, how little most of us learn about this. I mean, the Tripoli War, the Barbary War, it's not exactly standard curriculum, is it?
No, it tends to get overshadowed.
Yeah.
And just for clarity, if you hear Tripoli War, that's generally referring to the first Barbary War, focused on the conflict with Tripoli. Barbary Wars usually covers the broader conflicts with Morocco, Algiers, Tunis, and Tripoli over several decades.
Right, okay, so different names for overlapping conflicts.
Pretty much, yeah.
But even if many Americans have forgotten, the military hasn't. You mentioned the Marines.
Oh, absolutely. It's deeply embedded in their history and identity. Their hymn famously includes the line, "From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli."
The shores of Tripoli. That's a direct reference to this war, isn't it?
It absolutely is. It refers to the Battle of Derna in 1805, a key moment in the First Barbary War where Marines marched across the desert and helped capture the city. It was one of their first major overseas actions.
So if we step back and, connect this to the bigger picture, this wasn't just about pirates.
Not at all.
Yeah.
This whole period, this assertion of force, it was fundamental. It shaped how the young United States decided to interact with the rest of the world.
How so?
Well, it established a precedent. It showed that America, even though it was new and relatively weak compared to European powers, was willing to use military force to protect its interests and citizens abroad. It learned that diplomacy sometimes needs to be backed by credible strength.
So it wasn't just about defense, but about projecting power in a way.
In a nascent way, yes. It was a crucial step in developing not just its military, but its whole approach to foreign policy, resisting extortion, defending free trade. These became core tenets.
Wow. So this deep dive really drives home how a conflict that seems kind of obscure today actually had these huge lasting consequences. It shaped American power, its view on paying ransom or tribute.
It set a course.
And really defined the nation's character on the world stage very early on.
It really did. And it perhaps leaves us with a question to think about, even today.
Yeah.
What does it really mean for a nation, any nation, when it reaches that point? That realization that certain problems, certain threats, maybe can't be solved just by paying up or just through talk, but require a serious strategic investment in defense.
That's a heavy question. How does that early American lesson apply now?
Something for you, the listener, to mull over. How does that calculation between diplomacy, economic pressure, and military readiness play out in today's world? It's a complex balance, isn't it?
It certainly is. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. It's been fascinating exploring this really pivotal but often forgotten chapter of American history.